innovation is like the study of different perspectives. So how do you have innovation if you don't have a team that is coming from different backgrounds?
Yep, totally agree with that. We're talking here about a 5-day innovation sprint to drive ideation, do it faster in a repeatable way. In your case, between industry and academia, but it could be within an org, within multiple orgs. I think we can apply these principles anywhere. So let's try to map this out with a little bit more detail and see if we come up with a playbook that other folks can actually use. Let's talk about, how do you measure success in this program? Is it the number of ideas that come out of it?
So for us, it's a little interesting. I always like to talk to whoever's on the industry side, like, what are your end goals outside of getting this problem solved? Because I want to be able to facilitate and adjust based on what their needs are.
What has been the most interesting, robust prototype somebody came up with?
I mean, I've had like software engineers on teams that have developed an entire kind of replica of Pokemon Go for a company with the branding. That was the most intense thing I've ever seen, which was amazing.
What does good look like for volume of ideas?
Like, if you think of your standard classroom, if the board is not covered with about 1,000 sticky notes,
Right.
then you just got to keep going.
All right, Sarah, thank you for being here. I'm very much looking forward to the conversation. We're going to focus today on a fairly narrow topic of a program that you run out of a university for academia, partnering with corporates. And so I know I've already learned a little bit about what you do to bring you on and have this conversation, but thought it would be really interesting. And we're going to try something we've never done before, which is a live playbook. We'll get to that in a moment. But first, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, the background, and sort of the Blackstone LaunchPad program?
Yeah. So I'm the director of Blackstone LaunchPad at the University of Florida. And really, it's my job to kind of bring together industry partners with every single student on University of Florida's campus, from every degree program, to kind of create this innovation ecosystem. So it's a lot of fun.
You mentioned students from all backgrounds. So let's just talk about that a little bit, because I think this works outside of school, out of university too, but you very much believe in this sort of cross-functional approach. It's not necessarily students who are experts in a topic coming in to do something. You're bringing students from a whole variety of backgrounds.
Exactly. So I've spent about the last 15 years of my life focusing on cross-disciplinary education, that we can't really succeed unless we have these different perspectives coming together to problem solve. And so we've kind of developed this system that has really worked for UF, focusing on creating innovation sprints that connect kind of the industry partner with every single student. So we try to focus on student groups that are mixed majors, so engineering, business, arts, humanities.
And so maybe tell us a little bit about how the program runs at a high level, and then we'll start to dig into the weeds on it.
Sure. So I like to break out my months. So leading up, we kind of start with the first month or first week of the month, where I bring in a speaker, and students can kind of connect with the speaker. They can learn about kind of any industry. I like to choose one industry per month, and then I pick 3 weeks of a guest speaker. So we have 3 different guest speakers. And then the final week is a competition. So they're kind of able to hear from guest speakers as well as participate in an actual competition.
Right. Okay. Got it. And so can you share a little bit about success stories from the program? What's worked? I know you've run this for a couple of years now. So what have been some of the success stories, both from, the corporate angle who are participating in this? What are they getting out of it? I'm sure the students are learning tons of stuff, but what sort of comes out of this innovation sprint process?
So the number one thing is ideas. They get so many rapid fire ideas that the industry is able to actually use, implement, or at least kind of expand their horizons. And the students are able to get mentorships, possible internships, jobs, and also just experience or portfolio pieces. So it's really interesting to see them kind of connect with an industry that they might not have been interested in beforehand, but at least they get their feet wet essentially in just kind of observing this new industry thought process.
Right. So can you give us an example of, because you mentioned like an industry per month, so that you sort of pick one, and I know you've done a whole variety of them. Give us an example of what one of these looks like.
Yeah, so we recently did one with a healthcare provider, which is a local doctor's office. And the competition itself ran 5 days. It's a 5 day innovation sprint. Students hear about the company on day one, and then they dive right into the design thinking cycle in order to solve this real world problem and come up with ideas of a variety of solutions. So, for example, this healthcare provider ended up having a problem with their feedback forms not being filled out correctly. So they pitched it to the students. The students were able to go and explore and kind of observe the actual doctor's office. And then day five, when they come back with these solutions, they've done an ideation session, they've worked together, they've actually prototyped their solution. On day five, they pitched their solutions to the actual industry partner. And just for example, we had a team that had no interest in healthcare at all actually win. So with the feedback forms not being filled out, the team actually developed a prototype of their disposable cups with a QR code on it that led directly to the feedback. So these, if you go to this doctor's office, you can fill out your feedback form just by having that QR code on the cup. And within a couple months, the actual product was implemented, and two of the team members got hired. So it's kind of cool.
Oh, amazing. So that everybody wins in that case. And so
Agreed.
and you've been running this almost 2 years now, I guess, right? So December 2023, I think, is when you started. So what have been some of the things that have changed, lessons learned from, 2 years ago to today in terms of how you run the program?
I think the biggest thing for me is I got brought on in December of 23. So we really started to launch and organize by January of 24. And the biggest thing was trying to show what the benefits would be for students and industry. So a lot of the beginning was me reaching out to people in my personal Rolodex saying, please just come pitch a problem. Like, we can do this. I promise students will be here. It'll be really exciting. And then on the alternative side, as a professor as well, getting students to come in and actually get this hands-on experience. To today, where now we've really been implemented for close to 2 years. And I have industry partners reaching out to me on LinkedIn or emailing me, can I please be a part of this? So now we have this almost wait list of what's your project, what's your need statement, and then trying to plug and play.
Right. I was going to say or are corporates skeptical about the value of going through this because they have to work with you not just in the 5 day sprint. They have to prepare what the problem is. You have to sort of prep them for how to think about this. So are the corporates now you have a wait list maybe, but were they skeptical in terms of, oh, Sierra, like I get it, it will help students. I want to do that, but I don't think it'll really solve my problem, or I'm not sure I'm going to get value and want to invest the time, or are they all sort of gung ho to do this because they think aside from meeting quality people, some, quality ideas are going to come out of it?
I think at the beginning, some people thought I might be a little crazy. But, we was really trying to showcase the level of engagement. It's not just students participating in solving a problem that may or may not get solved at the end of the day, but it's that brand awareness that your company came to UF, really connected, boots on the ground, and connected with a group of students. And we have about 100 students that participate per competition. And so they're really able to shake hands and meet them and kind of continue building that reach and awareness for their company on campus. So there's so many different benefits that weren't really recognized at the beginning that are now kind of understood.
Okay. And the problems that these corporate partners bring to you, are they good on day one? Are they interesting? I mean, the feedback form one is interesting, but it's very specific. So do they come to you and say, oh, I have 1,000 problems? Or do they come to you and say, here's an idea, and you're like, guys, that's not going to work in this context? Is there a little bit of coaching involved with those corporates to bring problems to the students that will be worthwhile?
It is always interesting when I first sit down with like a company and I'm like, okay, so give me a list of problems and then we'll dive in. And I've had, pitches where they're like very, very specific, or they're like, well, we're opening a new office, and they have no idea where to start. So we try to do some preliminary framing for the companies to say, how can I help you reframe this need statement to be not siloed or specific, but just really focus on what the actual problem is.
Okay, got it. Interesting. And I know you work University of Florida, so two sides. You have corporate partners, you have students on the other side. Would you say that this approach can be applicable? Corporates working with themselves in terms of with employees, or corporates collaborating together, do you think you can abstract the methodology and the process that you've built over time where the groups of people could switch up and it wouldn't be just students and corporate partners?
Absolutely. There's a lot of different ideation techniques where it's fully gamified. So we can have a CEO on the same playing field as an intern. So if you're really diving in correctly, kind of with this completely open mind, there shouldn't be any kind of discrepancy between anybody. You can plug and play directly into an industry team. Preferably, my thought process is that you would bring people from different areas or departments that will give you the best kind of outcomes for ideation. But you should be able to use this kind of playbook for anybody.
Yeah, even if they're not domain experts, right? Because I find that sometimes folks, when we do this type of work with folks, they're always like, "Well, I don't, I'm in sales. I don't know how they do manufacturing, or I'm in marketing and I don't know how they do logistics." And I'm like, that's true, but I think with an open mind, you can come in and still ideate and learn and provide perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah, I guess the students don't have usually any background in the industry at all, right? So they have to catch up pretty quickly.
They do a good deal of research, which is kind of why we implement guest speakers leading up to our competition to give them a little bit more well-roundedness. But obviously, they don't always get to attend every guest speaker, so they do have to do a little bit of catch up. Whereas if you were to do this internally, they'd have a little bit more of background on the information.
Right, right. What do the pitches at the end look like? Because and I ask that, as we're talking about it, because I find often that's a big part of internal corporate innovation, where the presentation has to be a certain style, maybe the detail or the thoroughness of it, or they're nervous about presenting in front of their boss or a panel of judges. So, what does the pitch look like at the end when those students get up there? I imagine in front of the corporate and say, "Here's our idea. Here's the work we've done. Here's our confidence in it." What does that look like?
Um, We try to refine it as much as possible. So I do lead external kind of workshops on how to pitch, pitching 101, for those who have no experience in pitching. But we also keep it standard. So no matter what competition we're holding on campus, there are always 5 minutes of presentation with 4 minutes of Q&A from our judging. And we have a very standard rubric that focuses on concept innovation. And I try to tell the students, you don't have to be a whole team of engineers to build a robot, right? We can build an MVP, a soft prototype, to showcase the concept. And then it's up to the industry partners or the judges to dive in deeper down the road. But they, really focus on the concept and the validation, customer validation on both the problem and the solution. So if you're not talking to people getting the numbers, like that's a huge part of the meat and potatoes.
Yeah, so in that 5-day sprint, the students are going out, like that proverbial sort of getting out of the building and interviewing folks, subject matter experts, potential users, potential customers, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Does the corporate give them access to folks, or does the corporate say, "You go, we're not giving you access to our customers or anything along those lines. You got to go figure it out on your own," or do they facilitate any of that?
It completely depends on the innovation challenge. And those are some things I like to make sure that are confirmed with the industry partner by day one. So we tell students, hey, you cannot reach out to anyone at the company, or absolutely reach out. Here are 3 mentors. Here's, contact list. Or sometimes we'll have partners that just say, hey, our target audience is college students. Talk to other kids on campus.
That's
And
easy.
so yeah, so that one can be a little bit easier and more flexible for students.
Right, right. Okay, got it. So maybe before we jump into this playbook thing that we're gonna do, I have no idea how that's gonna go.
All good.
But before we do that, maybe just walk us through high level we wanna talk about the before the sprint part, but let's walk through the 5 days and sort of what do those 5 days look like? How do you design them? How do you run them? And then we'll try to codify this into something that we think other folks could use to try to speed up innovation within their own organizations.
Perfect. So what I called like the pre-sprint before the 5 days, I've already sat down with the industry partner. So I already know kind of the question and the need statement, just as like a side note, kind of being the scrum master facilitator. So when day one hits, I like to use the design thinking cycle. There's 6 stages, and we kind of just encompass all in about 4.5 days. So day one, our industry partner is going to give about a 20 to 30-minute presentation on who they are, just to give some background context, right? So we want the students to go in with a little bit of knowledge and research, but this specific presentation will give them the bullet points directly from the industry partner of who they are, what their mission is, and some end goals. And then they'll pitch their statement. They'll pitch a need statement and a really focused how might we question. And that how might we question just kind of rephrases in a positive look on what the problem is. And then students are off, right? They go into research mode. So they empathize with the current users. They figure out what the pain points are. They understand. So empathize and understand are the first 2 steps of the design thinking process. So it's all about research and connection. Day two, we typically hold a workshop that focuses on ideation. So I play a variety of different ideation games to get students to rapid fire ideate. So we can come up with 100 ideas in one day, just to kind of focus on that fun solution part. Uh, yeah. And then going into day three, we prototype. And like I said earlier, the robot doesn't have to work, but we do want that concept. So we refine it. We try to make it not just pretty, but add the features that we discovered during that research stage. So depending on how many student groups we have solving and competing against each other, they're each kind of diving into different features, different concepts, filling different gaps that they understood to be the highest priority. Um, and then day four, they kind of go towards that target audience and they get validation. So they can say that their product is more likely to work, more likely not to work. Do they need to pivot? If they pivot, what should they do? And each one of these steps is going into their final presentation, leading to day five, which is implementing through pitching. So they're showcasing how they would implement this project, what people said about their solution, in a full pitch competition with their industry partner. So
Got it. Do they work 24 hours a day while they're doing it? Or,
I know, right?
I mean, it must be more than a full day per day.
It's a lot going on. We've had competitions that I've had some students say that they truly did a couple of all-nighters to come up with certain things. But I try to tell students, like, take a breath. You can only get so much information. The robot doesn't have to work, right? We just want that concept. So
Okay, let me ask this then. What has been the most, what's the right, like, most interesting, robust prototype? Because the research part I get, but the prototyping is always like, was it a sheet of paper with a diagram? What was the craziest thing somebody came up with, on that day three, no, day three, I think. Yes, day three to four, when they were prototyping. What was the sort of craziest thing somebody came up with?
I think one of I mean, I've had like software engineers on teams that have developed an entire kind of replica of Pokemon Go for a company with the branding. That was the most intense thing I've ever seen, which was amazing. But kind of that like replica. I've also seen kids use like Figma to create their apps and have it fully work. So we did a competition with Adobe. Adobe Express was really trying to focus on one of the Adobe Express platform. And they definitely pulled a couple all-nighters, but they did an entire app focusing on like how to use it. And I was just blown away, impressed by how fast they're able to create this stuff.
Did those two groups win or no?
The one team who replicated Pokemon Go actually did. They are competing at a higher level with so they won round one, and they're actually taking that further for us.
When they
So
get going. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it does show you, I find often in these situations when people haven't done this sort of work before, they just can't imagine what can be doable within a week. Let's say within a week, you want me to come up with an idea, talk to a few people, prototype something, show it to those people or other people, get feedback, and pitch somebody. I can't possibly do that in a week. That's going to take 6 months or 12 months or whatever it is. And I'm sure the ideas are rough and lots of work has to be done on them after. Like, nobody is dropping millions of dollars on these ideas on day 6, but it does show you how much can be done in a short period of time.
yeah. We did one with a local clothing shop, and she was doing a rebrand and wanted the outside of her store kind of redecorated. And I had a group that came back and created a mascot for her, and they did the whole 9 yards of recreating, like designing the physical outdoor. And none of the students had any decorating experience or industrial anything experience or interior design. So it was really cool, but they actually developed out of cardboard what it would look like and did a full diagram. So it's
That's
it's
cool.
cool to see the
Yeah.
range.
Yeah, they can really bring things to life. That's
Yeah,
amazing. Okay, so we're talking here about a 5-day innovation sprint. It's more than 5 days because there's the work that you do in advance of that. There's the prep. There's the getting the corporate ready. There's getting the participants ready because I'm not even sure how they know how to interview people, how to do research. I don't know when that part comes in, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But at the end of the day, a 5-day innovation sprint to drive ideation, do it faster in a repeatable way, in your case between industry and academia, but it could be within an org, within multiple orgs. I think we can apply these principles anywhere. So I think with that, let's try to map this out with a little bit more detail and see if we come up with a playbook that other folks can actually use. So I'm going to share my screen. What we have here, just for everybody that's listening in and watching, a very, very empty template. There's not a whole lot going on here. We're going to fill this in. We've only got a couple of boxes across the top. Maybe we start with roles first. That's the easy one, Sierra, because of course we have students, right, which are participants.
absolutely.
Oh, now people have to watch me type. I mean, that's just so awkward. Um, Now, who on the corporate side are you typically let's if we focus more on bigger companies for a moment, because they'll have multiple sort of stakeholder levels as opposed to, smaller businesses. Who are the typical folks that you're dealing with? Like if you would think of your ICP, your ideal client profile, who is that typically?
Um, Kind of a range, but I like to talk with somebody who's kind of on the HR side, who knows kind of the where people would be placed in the company. And then I like to talk to somebody who's on either the team that has the problem because they're going to have the most information.
Yeah, business unit with the problem.
Yeah.
Do they ever get twitchy about confidentiality, sharing things they're not supposed to be sharing, that kind of stuff?
I've had a few companies that make the students sign NDAs and then ask
Okay.
for none of their stuff to be recorded. So we have actually run into that a couple of times. And it's interesting. It's not the companies you would think that are
Okay.
using NDAs because a lot of the larger corporate offices we've worked with, they don't care. They're excited.
Really?
So it's some of the
Okay.
smaller companies.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I'm kind of
Um,
interested. Yeah.
okay. So I put facilitator as well because of course you need an expert in the middle, I would say. If we put, corporates and students together, or even a corporate maybe doing this on their own with no experience, you run into trouble. I think facilitator in this case would be you, but that's an important role as well.
Absolutely. You need somebody who kind of knows both worlds. So if you're going to plug and play this somewhere else, it's got to the facilitator just needs to be able to communicate and have access to communicate with both. So I started in corporate and then I went into higher ed. So I kind of have this easy to communicate with both sides. But whoever's facilitating, definitely communication, number one.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So maybe let's talk about success metrics. I think operating cadence, I'm not sure we'll need because, again, your thing is so short and the playbook is going to say, like, start the month, pick the problem, work with the corporate. I know that's the part we're going to get to. But let's talk about how do you measure success in this program? Is it the number of ideas that come out of it? I'm sure there's did the students learn and enjoy themselves? Learning's always hard to measure, so I don't know how you do that, but talk to me about the success metrics.
So for us, it's a little interesting. I always like to talk to whoever's on the industry side, like, what are your end goals outside of getting this problem solved? Because I want to be able to facilitate and adjust based on what their needs are.
Right,
And then from the student side, what tells me we do have feedback where they can fill out a feedback form at the end of every single competition.
right.
But what also helps me is that they come back. So how many
Okay,
repetitive students do we have in competitions that they're willing to go to any industry competition because they just really
right.
enjoy this? Yeah.
Got it. And then what are the typical industry, like we talk about industry end goals, are there typical ones beyond just, hey, we have these problems or this problem we'd like solved? I guess, is it branding a little bit, recruiting? There's some other things there that, again, may not be relevant in other contexts, but are those the sorts of goals that you're talking about?
We have the brand awareness for sure, that they kind of now understand what the company is, if it's especially if it's smaller. But we've had companies come in and say, "Hey, we're looking to have 50 applicants for this internship." So one of
Right,
the goals at the end, when they do this pitch competition, they kind of shout out, "Hey, we have this internship, or we have this opportunity. We'd love for you guys to apply for it today, right
right,
here, right now." We also have a mentorship option where if industry is looking to just start doing some pro bono mentorship, they can also sign up to be mentors.
right. Got it. Is there maybe there's the brand awareness again, if I'm trying to translate this to an organization that might be trying to do this in-house. Certainly there's a success metric around learning somewhere in there, I would think, although again, hard to measure. But do you think companies are also trying to so in this case they're trying to demonstrate to students, hey, we're a cool place to work, we do innovative stuff, we're problem solvers. Do you think that that's also the case internally where, somebody at the executive level has to say, look, we need to demonstrate our innovativeness to our own employees to keep them engaged?
I definitely think so, especially if you're talking about like someone who wants to experience growth or movement within a corporate office.
Right,
We've had certain companies come out to and reach out and say, "Hey, like we'll offer badging," and I know they do internal badging. In
right,
so if they complete this, they get a design thinking badge because they did an experiential learning.
right,
So I think that helps the employees as well say, like, I was able to, not just do my regular 9 to 5. I was able to really experience and engage with my office um,
right.
with total freedom, which is pretty unique.
Yeah. Yeah, we see that a lot as well, which is this idea that if I get to break out of my day job and do something different for a couple of days, or in this case, let's say 5 days, if we can take employees through this type of model, they often learn a lot, they enjoy it a lot, and also I find that they go back to their day job with some new stuff that they can maybe incorporate, even if the sprint was on something very different from their day job. I use the word infect, but not in a negative way, that they can sort of infect bottom up the culture of the org that they're working with.
Exactly. I think that if you're able to kind of have influence on someone's like wanting to go back to work, right? Like I did this really cool thing that
Right.
I was engaged with. Like I want to continue working for this company.
Right.
Um, is huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. So let's walk through the playbook. You articulated at a high level. I think, and again, this is messy. We're going to, of course, clean this up. We're doing it in real time, but we'll clean it up later.
Okay.
But let's start with step one. So step one, and we'll use step one not as identifying the corporate partner, but identifying maybe the problem statements. So
Yeah.
if we start there and we just say identifying. Thank goodness I can spell reasonably well and type quickly. But I'll do this. I'll move this over here. I'm going to zoom in a bit. If we talk about identifying problem statements, what are the key bullet points there that we have to think about?
Yeah. I think the number one thing is that it's not it's I call it the Goldilocks rule, right? It's not too big, it's not too small. We're not focused on an immediate solution, and we're not focused on something that is so broad it doesn't make
Right,
sense.
right,
So trying to find that middle ground of we have a need, we have a gap to fill, but our statement isn't going to say, "Oh, an automatic solution," right? So
yeah. So maybe something that's not, if they're bringing a problem that they already have a solution for, that seems like a waste of everybody's time. So it has to be something just around the corner that they haven't been able to figure out, or perhaps maybe haven't totally prioritized based on their own resources.
exactly. So there we kinda try to also rephrase. So a lot of times, an industry partner will say something like, "Well, people coming to our coffee shop we don't have enough customers coming to our coffee shop." And it's
Right.
like, "Well, okay, let's find the root of this problem. Give us some pain points, give us some
Right.
focus points." Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you have to often, I mean, I thank you for saying that, by the way, and I'm, of course, trying to process and type and ask the right follow-up question, but, um, I'm glad you brought that up because to me, we see the same thing, which is, um, you know, if you ask a company, would you like to make more money? Of course, they'll say yes, because every company wants to make more money. And it doesn't matter what size they are or how much money they're making. I want more foot traffic into my restaurant. I want more of this. I want to sell more of my product. But your job in this context is to reframe that into an actual problem statement that a user or a customer actually has.
Exactly.
I think that one to me, like if I'm just going to put like four, four exclamation points on it, because I think that if you don't get that right, the 5 days kind of fall flat.
Exactly. And nobody wants to solve for something that is, 5 seconds to solve for, or it's so broad and they're like, well, where do we go from here?
Where do
So,
we even start? Yeah. Well,
yeah,
certainly in a 5 day sprint, I think you need a specific enough problem that they know, okay, I'm going to assume that problem is real
right.
for a moment. I know who has the problem, and so I know who to go talk to as quickly as possible. Um, and I'm going to try to ideate on the solutions. I suppose there are situations where that problem may not be real or as significant as we really think. Does that ever happen?
Yeah, we've definitely had some companies who have posted a statement or how might we statement, and they're like, "Well, we could implement this if this goes right. It most likely not. Our number one goal is brand awareness,
Right.
um,
Right.
or we have a team internally also working on this, but we want students to work on it too to compare the two,
Right.
which we've
Right.
had that as well. Yeah,
Got it. Okay. Can you just give me very quickly, otherwise we'll just get stuck on the one step. What makes a great how might we I'm not going to write it down, but what makes a great how might we statement?
To me, it's one that really empathizes with the user. So, it makes it when I look at a how might we statement and we're empathizing with this target audience, you've already kind of given me a very specific target to look at, to talk with, to observe, and it empathizes, right? So we go through the design thinking cycle, that human center approach. We want to make sure that this is a solution that relates to people, but it also solves an actual problem. There's a
Right.
root to this problem. Uh, yeah, so I think that that's the biggest thing is can we make sure that this how might we statement is really focused on a solid target audience?
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. That's awesome. So you've identified the problem statements. Now, I guess there's the onboarding part of this, which actually is, we can't ignore that, right? Um, so I think we should add that as a step here because it's pretty critical, like onboarding and it's really getting up to speed, right? And this would be true in any context, which is okay. So you share these problem statements. Do you share them before, or is it more so just what you described, which is we get these, these three sort of sessions with the students?
Yeah, so they with those 3 sessions with the students is just kind of an introduction to the industry itself and different
Okay.
roles, possibly finding a key market or a key gap in the market, but we don't release the how might we statement until day 1 of the competition.
Okay. Okay. So there's just a little, and again, if you're doing this inside of a company, of course, you already know the company, but
Right.
there might be a little bit of, hey, these are the areas we're looking at, or these are things to think about. There's got to be maybe a little bit of pre work.
Yeah. I think the best example I have is when we worked specifically with Adobe, they came out and they gave kind of an introduction. Most students know what Adobe is. So
Yes.
most people know what Adobe is. So it was kind of interesting to watch their presentation before they gave the how might we statement, because their presentation wasn't necessarily an introduction, but it was kind of like a here's what our goals are with this whole competition. So the
Right.
students
Right.
knew what they were going to do, or what they
Yeah.
kind of end results were going to be near,
Yeah.
before the how might we statement was
I
pitched.
like that. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then day one, let's motor through. So day one, what is the focus?
So day 1 is your industry presentation, an
Yeah.
introduction, your framing, and then the students, we encourage them to either show up as one individual or show up as a team. But we have a minimum of 3 and a max of 6 per team because this way they can meet each other day of. They don't have to come with a team.
Right.
But I require everyone to have a different major. So
Okay.
students are really kind of doing the icebreaker thing,
Yeah.
observing all that jazz. So
Okay. Got it. So that's just the day one. They're not getting out of the building on day one, or are they?
so they are free to go after they hear the presentation and the how might
Right.
we, it's research. So this is
Okay.
asking questions about the problem, doing the research. It's if you look at the design thinking cycle, it's step one and step two. Step one is empathize. Step two is
Right.
understand. So they're
Yeah.
getting all that info.
Yeah. So they are doing that in day one.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. That's good. By the way, I think the team thing also for me, I think that's the right. Again, I'm just reacting to your 3 to 6 people. To me, is the right size. I think when I've worked in situations where people do this alone, very
Mhm.
tough to do alone. So I like 3 people feels like a good blend. 6 feels like a lot of folks, but I totally understand that.
Yeah. I mean, innovation is like the study of different perspectives. So, how do you have innovation if you don't have a team that is coming from different backgrounds?
Yep, totally agree with that. Okay, so day 2, we are into research, correct? More interviewing of users?
So, we're taking our research and we're going into ideation.
Oh,
Um,
ideation. Right.
Yeah, so this is my
Exactly.
favorite day. I normally lead like a workshop, something that's gamified.
Yep,
I did my whole dissertation on like gamification and ideation because that is my world. That's my jam. So, how
yep,
many games can we play that are just focused on rapid ideation? And we can come up with, I like to say it's quantity over quality in this
yeah,
specific
totally.
moment, just
Yep,
because all these ideas can like have spin off ideas. They can, it's all about as many ideas as we can possibly get.
yeah.
Um, and so
What
students are
what's a typical number, Sierra? Like, per team, what are the people or maybe in total because it's all one challenge, like, what does good look like for volume of ideas?
so, if the board on a like, if you think of your, like, your standard classroom, if the board is not covered with about 1,000 sticky notes, then you just gotta keep going. And these do not have to be good ideas, they do not have to be thought out ideas, it's just to get everything out of our brains. And then I encourage teams to look at the board as a whole. We play this anybody who wants to come can come, and then teams kind of take different ideas and then go off on their own separately and ideate around the ideas that they came up with in the general one. So it's a lot of ideation.
How do they pick an idea? Do you have a framework for it, or is it just given the condensed time frame, you just say, "Teams, grab ideas off the board you like, jam on those ideas more with the tools and that you've equipped them with, through the facilitation, and just pick one that you like," or do you do something a little bit more systematic?
I like to tell them to create a persona on who they talk to in day one. So if you are doing an observation, if you're able to actually go to the company, if not, do research online. If you're able to interview or talk, who can you talk to get more information and have them finalize the pain points and prioritize them. So when you're looking at all these ideas, what fits the highest priority pain point?
Right. So pick ideas that meet or fit the prioritized pain points from day one, really.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. So then what is day 3 prototype? Now, see, I remember day 3 because that's the day where I'm like, cool, let's build robots, or rocket ships or whatever we're building. So day 3 is prototyping.
Prototyping. So normally teams are they're completely on their own on this day. We do have mentor stations set up, so if they want to come chit chat with either myself or if the industry partners offer mentorship, they can do that. But a lot of times, this is where teams just truly go and try to build the robot. So they'll start on paper sketching, and then they'll go from there. What works, what doesn't work. They go back to each other. I do suggest individually prototyping, drawing
Oh,
out, this is what I think it looks like, this is what I think it looks like, and then talking to your team about how to either combine or eliminate features
got
based
it.
on what each individual creates.
Do you give them any, again, like any, because they come from multiple disciplines, somebody may have never drawn a solution on a piece of paper in their lives. Do you give them any tips, best practices, case studies on how to do prototypes, what level of fidelity to do them at, or do you just say, guys, just go figure it out?
So a mix of both. If I have a lot of
Yeah,
repeat students, they kind of know.
they know
Um,
what they're doing. Okay, they're
exactly.
pros already.
At this point, they're like, "We can do stick figures and it's not gonna destroy the world."
Right.
If it's students that I've never had, I really encourage them to do different ideation, workshops with me the day before, so they
Okay.
can almost plug and play that with just sketching out the prototype instead of a variety of ideas. So there's games like Crazy Eights, where you're
Yeah.
drawing out different, low fidelity. I also show them kind of some really great videos from IDEO about like how to
Okay.
low MVP, right? So
Yeah.
stuff like that I think is really
Yeah.
helpful.
Makes
Uh,
sense. I mean, I
yeah,
think people, in my experience, again, like when you tell students is a little bit different, I think, because a little bit more open-minded, a little bit less experience. When you go into a corporate boardroom and you tell senior leadership, all right, everybody, pull out a pencil and start drawing on a piece of paper, people kind of like, what are you talking about? But generally, that when they get into it, they really see the value in that experience. But that takes a bit of a jump.
I used to play this one game that I created years ago, but it's just on prototyping, and I call it Blue
Okay.
Couch, and it's actually been banned in some classrooms because
Ooh.
it encourages students to, like, go out into the world, grab random things that don't apply to the problem, come back in, and then build based off these items, whatever
Ah,
you brought back with you.
okay.
Um, you
That's
can see why
interesting.
some teachers don't like, releasing
Yeah.
students and then bringing them back with random things.
Yeah.
Um, but it's really fun to kinda see what they come up like, what they bring back in order to build, which is really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've done work in the past with folks in a similar sort of thing, like a 5-day boot camp where on, day 2 or day 3 maybe, or day 2, let's say, we would be like, "All right," we're in New York, and we're like, "All right, go interview people on the street." And they're like, "What do you mean go interview people on the street?" I'm like, "You gotta go find people to talk to on the street or go to a bar or go to the park." And
Yeah.
everybody panics about it, and then they do it, and then they come back and I'm like, "Did you learn something?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's not as scary as I thought. And I actually learned a little bit about what we're working on." So I like that idea of just going out and grabbing things and prototyping what you can.
It's so much fun. Although I do think it teaches you, like, you should be a little bit like, being embarrassed,
Yes,
is not really a big deal,
not
right?
a big
Like,
deal.
you
Yep.
should be able to go talk to a random stranger.
Yeah. And you can get through that experience. It won't be the worst thing in the world. So,
Exactly.
okay, day 4, walk me through what day 4 is.
Yeah, so it's validation, right? So testing, validation. So they have hopefully developed some sort of a prototype where is I kinda like to phrase it as, like, if you handed this to a 4th grader, would they
Right.
know or understand? And if not,
Yeah.
let's kinda tweak it, right? So they bring their prototype into the world, and they say, whatever your again, we go back to that target audience, right? So if your target audience just happens to be college students, great. Take your prototype, walk around campus, and get feedback. Start to talk to people. If the target audience can be connected by LinkedIn, start to reach out. How can we connect to whoever that target audience is and get some good, hopefully, any type of feedback?
Right, right. Got it. And do you walk them through a little bit about, leading the witness and would you pay for this and asking good questions? Or do you just sort of say, again, like, get out there, put this thing in front of them, ask them what they think about it, collect that data, and go from there?
I do talk a lot about assumptions. So we have kind of like an optional workshop that day that's just focused on assumptions. Don't assume that this person is immediately going to buy your product because it solves the problem, right?
Right.
Unnecessary invention, stuff like that. Um, I don't do too much on, like, how to ask a question because I kind of want them to experience, is
Yeah.
this type of question gonna immediately fail or not? So I kind
Right.
of am throwing them in the deep end a little bit. But we do talk a lot about assumptions, leading up to this, and I kind of weed that into the ideation sessions as well.
Yeah, makes total sense. Yeah, look, I think again, the best way to learn is to try. There are some fundamental best practices, as you know, because you're an expert in this space. But in this condensed format, sometimes you just got to go out there and do it. Even if you explained it to folks, they're
Yeah,
still going to kind of muck it up a little bit as they do it, but then they'll get better at it over time. And so to me, it's not about getting perfect information. It's just about getting some information.
exactly.
And do
Absolutely.
they come back after this? So ideally, they have a prototype on day 3. They worked all night on it. Day 4, they're out there running around showing it to people. Do they iterate on the prototype after that and try to refine it, or is it really go into day 5, collect the insights and learning, and then put the pitch together?
So it's a mix of both, really. Can you if you get really negative feedback, is it enough negative feedback that you pivot? And all of this goes in your pitch. You can say,
Right,
"Hey, we
right.
developed this robot, but the feedback was that it should have X, Y, and Z. So our next stage is to do this."
Right,
Uh, do you take it at face value, right? So it's up to the team to kind of explain what they got as feedback and how they're going to adapt. Uh,
right. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah,
yeah.
I just wrote here, if you could see, like, everything is learning. So to me, in this exercise you're going through, it's not about being right or wrong necessarily. It's really about what was the journey that you went on in this condensed period of time to learn a bunch of stuff, because that learning is valuable. I would imagine the learning is valuable for the corporate partner, despite what comes out of it. We talked to 10 people and we learned XYZ, that alone could be valuable even if your idea doesn't get picked or voted the winner.
Exactly. Exactly
Yeah,
right.
makes sense. Okay, so day 5, pitch day.
Pitch day. So we reconnect with our industry partner. They come back. Typically, we have like, depending on the size, I'll have about 3 to 5 judges that are the industry partners.
Okay,
Um, and it's up to them if they would like additional help. I kind of host as the facilitator. I've already been with the students all week, so I never judge. I don't think that's fair in my world. So I try to facilitate the competition, right? I set it up. I normally feed everybody because that helps everybody be a little happier.
yep, yep, that's good.
And and then we kick it off in the team by team. So it's 5 minutes of pitching. Typically, it's about 5 and 4 or 5 and 5. So 5 minutes of pitching and about 5 of Q&A. Uh, and the students are fully judged on kind of 4 main points like viability, feasibility, the design thinking process as a whole, and then the creativity.
Right, right. What about desirability? Or do we not really know the desirability at this point?
We don't know the entire desirability most, so I do actually leave that off of the rubric because we don't
Okay,
always have that kind of prepared from our industry partners. Now, if
right,
that is a specific end goal and they wanted more feedback or more research on customer validation,
right,
we don't spend enough time normally on being
right,
able to showcase the whole thing.
right, 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 right.
Some
So
people might be yelling at me for that, but
no, 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 no. I think no. I don't think anybody will be yelling at you, but it is an important point, right? Which is in 5 days, getting to true desirability is challenging. So
yeah,
you can get feasibility, like could we even do this? You could get maybe a little bit of that viability, like this actually could make business sense for us to solve the problem in this way. To get to true desirability, I think would take much more research. Is that fair to say?
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it. Yeah, I think that's a good point. We've captured that. And again, that shouldn't take away from the value of doing a 5-day sprint. It might not be focused entirely on desirability because you wanna bring something to life at the end that kinda looks like a real solution. But
absolutely.
but really after, I know we only have a couple minutes, but, I know there's no day 6 or day 7 per se, but what happens sort of after this if from the corporate side, in terms of what do they do with these things? How do they take them and move them forward? If you were thinking about this in a context outside of academia.
So big thing is the participants. So instead of it being students, but participants, can they sit down with whoever were the judges and have kind of that one-on-one mentorship of maybe they're interested in something different? And can the judges or whoever was kind of leading the problem statement, are they able to identify something that can be implemented down the road, or maybe
Right.
different projects can be combined together? So I think there's a lot of communication that is created, and there's this bridge between it's bridged, right? The connection is
Right.
there now, this kind of spider network, where different departments can talk to each other and different levels can talk to each other, and showcase what people's needs are within an organization or industry, which is a huge thing to kind of solve outside of whatever their actual problem is.
Right, right. Yeah, makes total sense. Yeah, I think the unlock, I think the way you've described it is great, which is you've created a system that just encourages people to talk more about this stuff. So it could
Absolutely.
be department to department, it could be a senior leader to a junior person, it could be a student in your case with a mentor, and it just creates this permission and ability to unlock all of these conversations that could take 3 projects, smush them together, take learnings, put them somewhere else, and so all these threads emerge out of doing this type of work.
Absolutely. I think that's kind of the exciting part is that we can see potential in people too, right? Like, what are you actually interested in obtaining? So I think that's kind of fun.
Amazing. Well, Sarah, we made it just on time. That was fantastic. I think that was good. I don't know how you felt
That was
about it, but thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see what comes out of this magical playbook we created together. So thank you very much.
awesome. Thank you so much.